In an ancient Greek kingdom, at a time when the boundary between gods and mortals was thin, when the presence of Olympus still lingered in the air, 3 princesses sat beneath the fading light of dusk and spoke of destiny. They were daughters of a mighty king, raised in halls of marble and gold, taught from birth that their lives would one day be bound to men of power and renown. As evening shadows stretched across the palace, their thoughts turned to marriage, not merely as a union, but as the shape their future would take. "My husband will be very rich," the first declared, her voice filled with ambition. "He will dress me in the finest silks and cover me with jewels worthy of a queen." The second followed with certainty. "My husband will be a famous general, victorious in war and admired by all. I will stand beside him as his greatest achievement." Their words reflected a world that measured destiny in wealth, status, and power. Then their gaze fell upon the youngest. Psyche remained silent, her eyes distant, as if listening to something far beyond the palace walls. "All I want," she finally said, her voice calm yet unwavering, "is a love that will lift my spirit." Her sisters laughed, brushing aside her words as naive and impractical. To them, love was something to display. To Psyche, it was something sacred. And yet, it was Psyche whose beauty surpassed all others. Her face seemed shaped by divine hands, her presence commanding silence wherever she went. People journeyed from distant lands just to look upon her. Conversations ceased. Hearts trembled. Admiration slowly turned into reverence, and reverence into worship. And without realizing it, the people began to whisper a dangerous thought, that Psyche was not merely beautiful, but a goddess walking among mortals. As Psyche's fame spread beyond the borders of her father's kingdom, something subtle yet dangerous began to unfold. The crowds no longer gathered where they once had. Incense no longer rose from the same altars. The offerings meant for the goddess of beauty were quietly redirected, laid instead at the feet of a mortal girl whose face had captured the imagination of the world. People traveled from distant lands not to pray, but to gaze. They whispered Psyche's name with reverence, praising her beauty, her grace, her presence. Some bowed, others dared to speak the unthinkable, that no goddess, not even Aphrodite herself, could compare to this young princess of flesh and blood. What began as admiration slowly became devotion. High above, upon the heights of Olympus, Aphrodite watched in silence. She saw her temples grow empty, her statues untouched, her name fading from the lips of mortals. The glory that had once belonged to her alone was being offered to another. And for the goddess of beauty, this was not merely neglect, it was humiliation. Jealousy ignited within her. Her divine face hardened, her eyes burned with offended pride. "A mortal," she declared, "who dares to receive what belongs to the gods?" Beauty was her dominion, her sacred authority, and Psyche had unknowingly crossed a line no human was meant to cross. In the quiet of her abandoned temple, Aphrodite made her decision. Psyche would be punished. Consumed by rage, Aphrodite summoned her son, Eros, the god of love and desire, whose arrows bent even the strongest wills. She spoke not with tenderness, but with command. "This mortal," she said, "who dares to rival the gods must be humbled. Strike her. Make her fall in love with the most hideous creature that walks the earth. Let her beauty become her curse." And with that decree, judgment was set in motion. As night fell, Eros descended from Olympus, and slipped silently into the royal palace. Psyche lay asleep, unaware of the divine sentence hanging over her. The room was still. The air was heavy. Eros raised his bow, prepared to carry out his mother's will. But as he stepped closer, something unexpected happened. He saw her, not as a rival, not as a punishment to be delivered, but as she truly was. Psyche's beauty was not merely flawless, it was overwhelming. It stunned the god himself. Her face seemed to glow even in darkness, untouched by vanity, untouched by pride. And in that moment, Eros hesitated. Then fate intervened. Psyche stirred in her sleep, and the sudden movement startled him. His hand slipped. The arrow meant for her pierced his own skin. Pain flashed, and with it, love. Instantly, the god of love fell helplessly in love with the mortal he was meant to destroy. And because of that single moment, Aphrodite's plan collapsed. Psyche would live on, unaware that a god's heart now beat for her. Time passed, and Psyche's beauty only grew more radiant. She was admired wherever she went, her name spoken with awe and wonder. Yet something was deeply wrong. While suitors crowded the palace for her sisters, nobles, princes, men of status and power, no one dared to ask for Psyche's hand. She was desired from afar, but never chosen. Her sisters could not hide their pride. "You have always been adored," they said, "yet you remain unmarried, while we are already wives of noble men." Their words stung. The king tried to reassure his youngest daughter, promising that a suitor worthy of her heart would one day appear. But behind his calm voice, fear was growing. Her beauty, once a blessing, had become a mystery, and perhaps a curse. What no mortal knew was the truth unfolding beyond human sight. Eros, wounded by his own arrow and bound by love, refused to awaken desire for Psyche in any man. No arrow flew, no heart was stirred. He could not allow another to possess the one he loved. And so Psyche remained alone, untouched by love, despite being worshipped by all. At last, driven by desperation, the king turned to the only place that might offer answers. He journeyed to the oracle of Delphi, seeking the voice of Apollo himself. With trembling hands and a breaking heart, he asked about his daughter's fate, unaware that the answer he would receive would change Psyche's destiny forever. Within the sacred halls of Delphi, the air was thick with incense and dread. The king stood trembling before the oracle, his heart heavy with hope and fear intertwined. From the depths of the temple, through the coils of the sacred serpent, the voice of Apollo finally spoke. Cold, distant, and absolute. There would be no comfort in these words, only truth decreed by the gods. "Your daughter," the oracle declared, "is destined to marry a winged and perverse being, a creature feared by both gods and men." The words struck like thunder. Psyche was not to be wed in joy, but delivered in sacrifice. She would be taken to the edge of a dark abyss, dressed as a bride, and left there to meet her terrible fate. This union, the oracle warned, would bring not honor, but death. The king left the temple in tears, his soul torn apart. He resisted the prophecy, clinging to the hope that it might somehow be averted. But Psyche's sisters, driven by envy and fear of divine wrath, urged obedience.
"Defy the oracle,"
they warned.
"and the gods will turn against our kingdom."
Cornered by fate, the king surrendered to the will of Olympus. The day came like a funeral disguised as a wedding. Psyche was led toward the cliff in bridal garments, her procession silent and mournful. Hearing her parents' sobs, she spoke with calm resolve.
"Why do you weep now?"
she asked,
"when you once rejoiced in my beauty?"
Then, lifting her head to the heavens, she accepted her destiny.
"Carry me to the edge,"
she said.
"Let me meet the fate the gods have chosen."
Left alone at the edge of the abyss, Psyche stood between life and the unknown. The world below her was silent, vast, and merciless. She waited for terror, for claws or wings, for the monster promised by the oracle. But instead, something unexpected stirred the air around her. A gentle breeze rose from the depths below. It was not violent, nor cruel. It was soft, deliberate, almost tender. The wind wrapped itself around Psyche's trembling body, lifting her from the cliff as if guided by unseen hands. This was Zephyr, the west wind, sent by divine will to carry her toward a destiny she could not yet comprehend. Suspended between earth and sky, Psyche drifted through the air, her fear slowly giving way to wonder. The land beneath her faded, replaced by clouds and light. When the wind finally released her, she awoke upon soft grass, surrounded by flowers in full bloom. A sweet fragrance filled the air, unlike anything she had ever known. Before her stood a palace of dazzling beauty. White marble columns gleamed in the sunlight, gold and silver adorned every surface, and fountains whispered with flowing water. Psyche ascended its steps in awe, overwhelmed by the splendor before her. She had been prepared for death, but instead she had arrived in a place that felt touched by the divine. As night descended, the palace fell into silence, and darkness wrapped itself around Psyche like a veil. She was led into her chamber, where no lamp was lit and no shadow could be distinguished. Alone in the dark, her heart pounded as she remembered the words of the oracle and waited for the terror she had been promised. Then she felt a presence. Someone entered quietly, not with violence, but with care. She sensed his breath, felt his touch, warm, gentle, filled not with cruelty, but affection. Fear melted away. The night that was meant to bring death instead brought comfort, intimacy, and a love she had never known. When dawn came, he was gone. The chamber was empty, and light revealed nothing of her mysterious husband. Yet night after night he returned, always unseen, always loving. Their bond deepened in the darkness, where trust replaced sight and affection grew without form. At last, Psyche gave voice to the question in her heart. "Why do you hide from me?" she asked. His reply was firm but tender. He asked only one thing, that she never try to see him. Love, he said, must be built on trust, not knowledge. And though doubt lingered, Psyche agreed, choosing faith over sight. Though Psyche's days were filled with wonder, her heart grew heavy with longing. Surrounded by splendor, she still ached for the faces she had known since childhood. One night, she spoke softly to her husband, confessing the pain she carried. She missed her family, she said, and the thought that they believed her dead weighed upon her soul. After a long silence, he agreed to let her return, believing that her choice to come back would prove the truth of her love. When Psyche appeared before her parents, their grief turned to astonishment. She was adorned in radiant jewels, her presence glowing like that of a queen. Tears of joy flowed, and her return was celebrated as a miracle. Yet behind the smiles, envy stirred. Her sisters saw her wealth, her beauty, her mysterious happiness, and jealousy took hold of their hearts. Eager to know the source of her fortune, the sisters followed Psyche back to the palace, carried once more by the west wind. There, they beheld everything with their own eyes. The marble halls, the golden splendor, the invisible servants. It was all real. And the truth only deepened their resentment. What Psyche possessed, they desired for themselves. So they planted a seed of fear. They reminded Psyche of the oracle's warning, whispering that her husband was a monster who would one day destroy her. They urged her to take a knife and a lamp to uncover his true form in the night. And though Psyche resisted at first, doubt had entered her heart. And once doubt takes root, even love begins to tremble. That night, Psyche lay awake beside her sleeping husband, her heart torn between love and fear. The palace was silent. Her hands trembled as she reached for the small lamp and the hidden knife. Slowly, carefully, she brought the light closer, preparing herself to face the monster her sisters had described. But when the flame illuminated his face, Psyche gasped. There was no beast before her, no terror. Lying beside her was a young man of breathtaking beauty, radiant and divine. In that instant, she understood. This was no curse. This was a god. Overcome with awe, she leaned closer, and in her trembling, a drop of hot oil fell from the lamp, striking his chest. Eros awoke in pain and sorrow, seeing the knife in her hand and the light she had been forbidden to use. "How could you doubt me?" he cried. "I asked for only one thing." Though Psyche begged forgiveness, it was too late. Trust had been broken. Love, wounded by suspicion, could not remain. With a final look of grief, Eros spread his wings and vanished into the night, leaving Psyche alone in the darkness she had chosen. Broken-hearted, Psyche leapt after him, but fell to the earth below. She survived the fall, but her heart lay shattered. Her sisters, hearing of her return, rushed to the cliff, hoping to claim her fate. But the wind did not save them, and they perished. Alone and desperate, Psyche wandered the world, serving in the temple of Demeter, carrying grief, guilt, and longing. Her trial had begun, for love once lost must be earned again through suffering.